A single ruling has just changed the course of a high-profile trial. A judge has allowed advanced DNA evidence to be presented to a jury. For prosecutors, it's the breakthrough they've been waiting for. For the defense, it's a devastating setback that could define the outcome. Tonight, we unravel what this decision really means, not just for this case, but for the future of criminal trials. The case. Courtrooms across America are filled with routine hearings, motions, and objections. But sometimes, a single pre-trial ruling shapes the entire trial before it even begins. The case at hand is one that has already captured national attention. Insert case reference, e.g., the Gilgo Beach murders trial, or keep generic for evergreen. The defendant faces charges of multiple counts of homicide, and the evidence has been contested at every stage. Prosecutors argued that new DNA methods tied the accused directly to crime scene evidence, methods far more advanced than traditional short tandem repeat analysis, the kind most jurors are familiar with from television shows. Defense attorneys fought to exclude this evidence. They claimed the technology was too new, too experimental, and unreliable in court. Their motion, if successful, would have kept the DNA results out of the jury's hands. But after weeks of hearings, testimony from forensic experts, and legal arguments on both sides, the judge made the decision. The evidence would come in. And with it, the stakes of the trial changed overnight. The science. To understand why this ruling matters, you have to understand the science behind it. Traditional DNA testing looks at short sections of DNA called markers. In many cases, these are enough to identify a suspect or exclude someone from suspicion. But when samples are degraded, mixed, or tiny, traditional testing can fall short. Enter advanced DNA analysis. The method in question here is whole genome sequencing combined with probabilistic genotyping. In simpler terms, it allows scientists to read far more of a person's DNA and use statistical models to separate mixed samples. Imagine finding a single hair at a crime scene, too small and degraded for traditional tests. With new methods, that fragment can now be amplified, compared, and potentially tied to one individual with statistical confidence. Prosecutors view this as a powerful tool, especially in cases that have gone cold for years. But defense attorneys see a danger. They argue that jurors may put too much faith in numbers they don't fully understand. A probability of 1 in a trillion sounds definitive, but it still relies on software models, lab procedures, and human interpretation. And in court, science is never just science. It's also strategy. The ruling. When the defense moved to exclude the DNA evidence, the judge had to decide if the method met the standards for admissibility. In the United States, courts use two main tests, the Frye standard and the Daubert standard. Frye asks whether the method is generally accepted in the scientific community. Daubert, the more common modern standard, asks whether the method is scientifically valid, has been peer-reviewed, has known error rates, and is relevant to the case. During the hearings, forensic scientists explained how whole genome sequencing works. They described validation studies, the mathematical models behind probabilistic genotyping, and the safeguards against contamination. The defense countered with their own experts, who warned that the technology was still developing, that error rates were not fully known, and that jurors could be misled by statistics they didn't understand. In the end, the judge ruled that the technology met the legal threshold. The evidence would be admitted. Jurors would hear it. And they would be asked to weigh its significance. This ruling didn't convict anyone. But it gave prosecutors a powerful new weapon, and gave defense attorneys a far more difficult path forward. Strategic impact. The prosecution's strategy is now clear. They will present the DNA evidence as a direct link between the defendant and the crime. They will bring experts to the stand to explain how the analysis was conducted, and they will emphasize the statistical odds of the DNA belonging to anyone else. For the defense, the task is harder. They must convince jurors not to take the numbers at face value. They will cross-examine the experts, challenge the reliability of the lab work, and argue that the technology is too new to be trusted. But there's a risk here. Studies show that jurors often see DNA as nearly infallible. Even when experts explain error rates, the emotional impact of a match is hard to overcome. Past cases prove the point. In some, advanced DNA evidence has cracked cold cases wide open, leading to convictions decades after crimes were committed. In others, mistakes in the lab or flawed interpretations have led to wrongful convictions. The question isn't whether DNA is powerful. It's whether it's infallible. And that's where the drama of this trial lies. What happens next? So what happens now that the DNA is in? In the coming weeks, jurors will hear expert testimony. They'll see charts, probability models, and diagrams. Prosecutors will highlight the odds, 1 in a trillion, they'll say. Numbers so large they feel like certainty. The defense will fight back. They'll argue that statistics don't tell the full story. They'll point out that labs are run by people, and people make mistakes. They'll remind jurors that software is only as reliable as its programming. But the reality is simple. The ruling ensures that DNA will be a centerpiece of the trial. It will shape how jurors see the rest of the evidence. It will influence how attorneys craft their closing arguments. And no matter the verdict, it will almost certainly become a point of appeal. This is how a single ruling, made before opening statements, can shape the entire arc of a trial. Closing and reflection. DNA has always carried a kind of mystique in the courtroom. It feels like pure science, objective and undeniable. But as this case shows, it is also contested ground. Judges, lawyers, and jurors must weigh not just the science, but the reliability of the people and processes behind it. The decision to allow advanced DNA evidence has set this trial on a new course. Whether it leads to conviction, acquittal, or years of appeals, one thing is certain: the story of this case, and of this ruling, will be studied long after the verdict is read. All details in this video were verified against court filings and reputable reporting. Full sources are linked in the description. If you found this breakdown meaningful, subscribe to Silent Veil for verified true crime analysis every Tuesday and Friday. We lift the veil on hidden stories, always with respect, always with truth.